Lecture 5, we will be dealing with the second part of the functions and duties of an exchange.
The exchange rules must also provide for capital adequacy, guarantee, and risk management requirements. Capital adequacy is very important. If a company doesn't have any capital in reserves, they've got nothing if things go bad, right? Our economy works really in ebbs and flows, and you want to make sure that you've got reserves for when things don't go well. It needs to be efficient, honest, transparent, and fair. The rules need to be set out that they are fair for everyone and that there's transparency, so not one institution is favored over another. The rules also need to see the manner in which transactions are cleared and settled. So the JSE has its own settlement procedures, the XAREX has settlement procedures, and they're not the same. For example, the JSE is T+3, which means that their transactions are settled in 3 days. Used to be T+5. Whereas the XAREX, we all know, is T+0, so it is instant settlement. You can see that there are a lot of the requirements. I've only gone through a few. So for example, I look at 2I. An authorized user cannot conduct business with a person that they suspect requires approval as a nominee. So if you look at section 76 of the FMA, you will see the type of people that need to be approved as a nominee. So they cannot conduct business with that person until they are a nominee. There are certain circumstances where trading may be suspended or halted, and those exchange rules need to provide for those circumstances. When will trading be suspended and or halted? They also need to talk about the operation of a trust account. So a trust account, when we look at segregation of securities in section 21, shows you exactly how the securities need to be kept. You need to be able to identify the securities that belong to a particular client. Okay, if you look at 2, they need to set out rules for the recording of transactions, monitoring of compliance, surveillance of any matter. And if you look at number T, when complaints are lodged against an exchange, there needs to be a manner in which these complaints are investigated. When a claim is investigated, a person who controls exchange laws, there need to be interim exchange rules before proceedings can follow. Because if you think of the court process is very long. So for example, if someone is contravening an exchange law and there's an investigation, there needs to be an interim process during the investigation from the time that the investigation starts until the enforcement procedure happens. If there is not such a process, that person may trade recklessly during that period of time because it's not always instantaneous. If you look at W, it talks about insurance, guarantees, and compensation funds. So the JSE and the other exchanges set out rules with regards to these insurance, guarantees, and compensation funds. It also provides for the fees that need to be disclosed to the clients for their services. So when they do certain transactions, the fees need to be disclosed. They can charge different fees for different transactions. And if you look at Z, very interesting, the word may issue exchange directives. Now, if you think back to the beginning of the section, if you look at the top of the slide, it says the exchange rules must. So must means that they have to do it. This is not optional. However, if legislation says may, that means that is an optional thing for an exchange to do. So an exchange may issue exchange directives. If you look at the JSE does have rules, obviously they have to, but they do also have JSE directives. If you look, it carries on what the rules must provide for. They must provide for administration of securities held by authorized users. They look at interdealer brokers. They look at the notification of the exchange and also supervision by an exchange. Now that you see what the exchange rules must provide for, Section 17.3 says that if there's any conflicts between the rules and any other depository rules, the FMA will override. If you look at Section 17.5, it looks at the section that applies to authorized users. So it says the rules apply to all authorized users and all the security service and the services that the authorized users are using in the exchange. So anything that an authorized user does, the exchange rules will apply. They are not vague here. They say that anything that they do, what they do generally, and the specific services they provide in terms of security. Very important, and I've asked this before, is Section 17.7. A rule made out in the exchange is binding on who? Obviously the exchange, they made the rules. Binding on all authorized users of the exchange, the issuers of securities, officers and employees of the exchange, as well as clients of the authorized user. So if you think about these various people, where would most people fall? So if you look at myself, for example, I would fall under client of an authorized user. If I go to a broker would be an authorized user of the exchange, I would be a client of that broker. So now these exchange rules apply to most lay people. Do these people know the exchange rules? Well, technically they don't, but remember with the law, ignorance of the law is never an excuse. So it's up to your broker to educate their client and inform the client to tell them if they are in contravention of an exchange rule.